And if I don't get to something, then we don't get to it all. I don't expect that we will. But we're going to start out with the basics, because I've been told by Cheryl that this group is very diverse. Some of you are acrylic artists, and many of you happen to be watercolor artists, which I love because I used to be a watercolor artist. So with that in mind, I'm going to kind of sort of introduce these supplies and materials and techniques and things as if, you know, I'm starting from the beginning, because I know that some of you are beginners, and I don't, I'm kind of like wanting to reach all levels here, beginning, intermediate, advanced. So I'm going to start from the very top here. What materials do you use when you are an acrylic artist? And so obviously you're going to need some paint, and I'm going to turn my camera down so you can actually see my table. And give me 1 second here. Steady my camera. Okay, so first off, and Cheryl, if at any time like you can't see what I'm doing, please just unmute and let me know.
I will.
Okay, thank you. So these happen to be Nova colors. I've put little labels on them, and they are in these little bottles. And this is one type of paint. These would be fluid because they come out of a squeeze bottle. But not all acrylic paints are fluid. So because I've been painting for so long, I have quite an assortment of paints, and I just want you to be familiar with the options. So obviously anything in a bottle is going to be fluid, but in addition to that, there are different kinds of fluidity. So for example, I love Golden products in addition to the Nova color, which let me just show you what that looks like. If any of you ever want to order Nova colors, that is their label. And then many of you are familiar with Golden. Now, Nova color only, as far as I know, has one consistency of paint. But Golden, which most of you, if you're an acrylic artist, know that they have their fluid line, and then they have their high flow acrylics, which means, you know, like less surface tension. And then they also have your heavy body that come in jars. I got this on eBay. I'm always looking for bargains, you know, so I'm sure you do too. Here's the set that I actually have on my resource page. If you're ever like looking for anything that I show you, almost everything that I show you that I use is on my resource page at artandsuccess.com. I use it myself to go there, and because there are links that click to where I get them on Amazon, and that way I don't have to search all over the internet for them. But I'm going to be using one of these today to do a demo. And these are the more heavy body that come in a tube versus a jar. Sometimes I'll use spray paint. This is a Liquitex brand. There are other brands, of course. But then you want to make sure that you're using an acrylic brand and not an oil-based brand, which is what you might find at the hardware store. So when you go acrylic, you kind of have to go onto an art supply website. Don't expect to find this at an Ace Hardware store. You might, but be sure that if you're going to incorporate this with your acrylic, that you're using a water-based acrylic and not an oil base. Another brand, M. Graham. I get this locally, and obviously in a tube, and it's quite you know, heavy body. And what else? Oh, I'm going to show you these interference colors just because when I first learned about these guys, they're so unusual. For those of you who like special effects, and I don't even know if I'll have time to really show you all about how they work, but I will see if I can show you at least a little bit. And what happens is they've got particles in the paint that, and some of you I'm sure already know about them, but there are particles in the paint that kind of reflect light in a way that is pretty spectacular. And I can just show you, I did this quick example here, but this is interference colors done on a very highly textured board. There are a couple steps that I went through, but the whole point of this was to show you the metallic nature of interference colors. And I'll just show you like a really small demo to show you how you get that interference effect. And then in chat, maybe you can mention, like, if you've ever used interference colors, like, let us know, because I'd love to know how many of you are familiar with those. I'm going to put this stuff away. So those are the paints, but you can't just paint, right? You have to also occasionally use other things. So I'm going to get out some other things here. Make sure you can see that. Move this out of the way. Okay, so a lot of you who paint in acrylic know that it's important to use some various mediums. And what is a medium? A medium is something that you add to your paint, whether it's fluid, heavy body, or just the regular Nova color. And the reason that you would add a fluid is to change the nature of the fluidity. So for example, here's a very messy bottle of Golden Airbrush Medium. And this is I don't have the original labels on here because I've moved them into these squirt bottles, but this is a gold and acrylic polymer medium. So notice that this is very fluid, like even more so than skim milk. And then this is pretty viscous. So this might be like a Yoplait. Some other mediums that I tend to use would be, so these would be two of the main ones that I use. The airbrush medium and the acrylic polymer medium. This happens to be gloss, but whether it's or matte doesn't really matter. This is the other one that I use quite a bit. Again, it says gloss, but it also comes in matte. That is a personal choice. It doesn't matter. But this is a gel. So when I showed you how fluid these guys are, this isn't a jug because it's very thick. See, it doesn't come out. So you have to scoop it out. And when you mix these mediums with your paint, the whole point of it is to change the viscosity of your paint. Some other special items would be like this open acrylic medium. Now, this is a medium that I've done an experiment on because a lot of acrylic artists say, oh, my paints dry too fast, you know, because they're comparing it to, say, oils. Because a lot of artists will work in oils as well as acrylic. And all I can say is that the test I did with this, and you must follow the directions if you try this, it tells you exactly how much to add to your acrylic. If you follow the directions, then you will find that whether you're using fluid, heavy body, or Nova color, I extended my work time by about 20 minutes. You get 20 minutes extra working time. That may not sound like a lot, but you know, it will be to some people. I'm going to be talking about supports in a second, but for many supports, like raw wood, you'd want to gesso your board first before you work in acrylic. So again, this is a Golden brand of white gesso. I do recommend a artist grade form of gesso as opposed to student grade, because the difference is the amount of the compound that has absorbency. So if you go student grade, what they've not put in there as much is, I think it's the calcium carbonate. That's what creates the great bind between your acrylic and your board. So don't, like, if you're going to buy student grade paint, that's fine. But when it comes to gesso, I really encourage you to get the professional grade. And then gessos come in all different colors. This happens to be a black gesso I got from Nova Color, but you can also get all kinds of colored gessos. You can also color a white gesso with a little bit of acrylic paint, you know, so it's up to you. And then, you know, if you look around, you're going to find all kinds of interesting texturing materials, you know, from pumice to black lava to sand, and, you know, and Golden has just so many varieties of things. I don't actually use these all that often, but I just wanted to show you that I do have a few. And then for my final varnish, those of you who've taken my courses know that I love the final finish of an acrylic painting when I can get it to look more like an encaustic painting. So as an example, the typical acrylic painting has a really high gloss. This one has less of a high gloss. I don't know if you can see that or not, but this is one that I show in one of my courses, which is Working in a Series in Complex Color. This is one of 4 paintings that I do in the course. And the final varnish is a 4-step process of using this. I use the Liquitex pouring medium when the painting's all done, after I've signed my name. And then they're a 4-step process to get like this encaustic-like finish. And so I do have the Liquitex pouring medium. There's a comparable product called Golden Self-Leveling Gel. The only real difference The only real difference is that the golden product dries a little bit faster, so you have a little bit less time. Now, in case you're familiar with this product, I gave it a shot, but I wasn't happy with it. And I just want to point that out for those of you who've heard about PowerTex. It is a water-based cold wax. People thought they could mimic getting the same effect with acrylic that artists use when they use cold wax medium plus oils. Well, I can tell you that there are some things about it that help you to get some similar effects, but what I found is that there are 0 directions on here. I even reached out to the company's owner in the Netherlands, and they couldn't give me any like exact details. So what really matters is, well, how much of this to how much of your acrylic, and then what kind of acrylic are you using? Well, they didn't give me any advice on that. So in my opinion, I don't really want to use a product that I don't know how to use it correctly. It's not even on the label. So maybe some of you have had great luck, and I would love to know how you did it. So those are the mediums that I use, the main ones. I want to also point out that Golden, I reached out to them because they have so many products, and they're really happy to send you information. Sure, you can go to their website and you can download all their PDFs, but they're happy to send you this little envelope, which is awesome. It's got, they also make Williamsburg paint, which is oils. But inside, you're going to get this wonderful folder, and it's got all of their products in there. It tells you all about the colors that are available in the various fluidity. They send it to you for free. Just go to their website and ask them for their free information, and they'll send it to you. Pretty awesome. Okay, so that's pretty much the materials and supply part of the paint and the mediums. And then I did want to show you one quick little demo here. let's get started with at least some paint, right, or something. So I was going to show you the difference in flow. It's a real quick thing here between the airbrush here, the acrylic polymer medium here, and the gel, because I really want you to see that the difference in these mediums has to do with how thick they are. So like I said, this is like the skim, like even more thinner than skim milk. You can kind of see how drippy that is. Okay, so instead of adding water to dilute my my paints, I happen to use airbrush medium. And then acrylic polymer medium is a little bit thicker. So that kind of holds its form. Now, let's say that you're working with collage material and your collage paper happens to be kind of thick. That's when I go for my gel. I'll show you another example when I use this, but this is something that can be applied with a squeegee or a palette knife. It's lovely, really great for like heavier collage papers like cardstock or burlap. You know, say you've got something that you found in nature and you really want to adhere it. Well, I would go for the gel because this is too wimpy. That might work, but this is going to do it. Now, let me just show you real quick in case we don't get time. So for this gel, and I'm going to go over surfaces real quick here, but this happens to be one of my favorite surfaces. It's Strathmore Illustration Board. And I like it because, well, you don't have to gesso it. And in this, when I did this here with texture, I did not gesso first. You can, but it's kind of optional. This is like an all cotton rag. So it's a high quality surface. I think it's 8-ply. Again, it's made by Strathmore and it comes in, you know, all kinds of sizes. So I put the gel on here, and while it was wet, well, first of all, I kind of leveled it off with this guy. It's a trowel, just to make it real smooth. And then I took various tools, which I'm going to show you in a second, but, you know, things that have mark making potential. And I just made all kinds of interesting shapes and texture like that. And that led to this interference color, which again, you can really get the impact of that just as the light catches it and see that metallic sheen to it. But there are a few steps between going from here to this, like that. There's the graphite powder that I used, and it just got into my board. So there you go. That's one of the steps. So that would be a little example of the difference in viscosity. I'm going to put this aside. Now, when this dries, you can see that that's already starting to dry. And these, although they look white, for those of you who have used mediums, know that they dry crystal clear. So even though you see them now, when this dries at the end of 2 hours, we'll check back, and I bet this won't even show anymore. All right. Now, supports. Let's talk about what you paint on. I already mentioned the Strathmore board, which I really love that. There are some other things though, like watercolor paper. So if you're a watercolor artist, I'm going to work on this today. And I tend to have a kind of a certain size that I cut these into, and I can get, I believe it's 2 of a 22 by 30 inch Arches watercolor sheet of paper. And I put watercolor paper on the back. I have white tape, dividing this into 4 5 by 7 inch quadrants. And for those of you who are in my my course and work in oils, I just want to point out that this is Arches oil paper. And if you didn't know it, you wouldn't know the difference, right? Because they look the same. So if you're going to work in both mediums, on the backing paper, I put Arches oil paper versus Arches watercolor paper because you just don't want to get them mixed up. You could work on Arches, you could work on the Arches watercolor paper with acrylics, but you can't work with cold wax and oil on the watercolor paper. That's the difference. And then Ampersand, of course, has their variety of wonderful surfaces like this one. I love Ampersand panels. They're kind of like, like just real top quality. So there's like a super smooth finish. If you happen to be like a real precise, want real high detail, maybe you do portraits. There's a gesso board, the artist panel. They come in all sizes. And then another surface that you don't have to gesso any of the Ampersand panels because they come pre-gessoed. But in this case, I'm not going to gesso my watercolor paper. I actually like the raw paper. With Multimedia Artboard, they also come in all different sizes that are listed on the back side. And they come in this, like usually 10 sheets at a time. But you can paint on either side. And again, you do not have to gesso this for acrylic, or if you're working in oils, you don't have to gesso those. So that's really nice. And then what if you want to work on these wonderful Baltic birch panels or some other kind of wood that you happen to have? You can do that. But if you're going to work on raw wood, what I would do, first of all, there's the color difference. Not just that though, by gessoing your raw panel, you're going to enhance the ability of your acrylic painting to be nice and strong. And, it's just a good idea because there are tannins in the wood that can permeate up and affect your paints. I usually gesso both sides because if you don't, you might get some warpage, but you can also not worry about it. And then if you do get warpage, then just put a thin coat on the other side and it should flatten out. So those are surfaces. And I'm sure that you've thought of some other surfaces that you may like. And then as far as palettes go, there are a lot of things you can use for a palette. Obviously, you can use the gray palette paper that you're probably familiar with. It comes like this. It comes in different sizes, and you just use one side of the palette paper. You can't use the back side. But, the reason you would use this is because it's gray. So if you happen to understand value, then when you look through a value finder, you can see that it's between these two values, and it's just a great mid-tone. So you can really tell, is your color light? Is it dark? Is it mid-tone? That's the advantage of this, but you don't have to do that. You can use freezer paper if you're on a budget. So sometimes I'll cover cardboard with freezer paper, the shiny side up. You can also use a sheet of glass, but if you're going to do that, I do recommend tempered glass, and I recommend sanding the corners. You ask the glass company to do that for you and round the corners. And as you can see, I taped some gray palette paper behind it, but you don't have to do that. But I did it because then you get the advantage of the gray. And you could just paint the back side of it with the gray paint as well. And in a second, if you haven't seen my YouTube video on how to make a wet palette, which allows you to work longer with your paints, I will show you that in a second. But first, there are some other tools to talk about. Lots of tools. So brayers and of course brushes, and I have an assortment here. I have a lot of different brushes that I've collected over time. These would be my flats. My favorite of all, and this is from the watercolor days, is my Aquarellable made by Winsor Newton. There is another company, or probably several, that have copied the whole style with the beveled edge, which is for like making marks on watercolor paper. But I just love this brush. And then here's a smaller one. Those are flats. And here's a flat. Those are all flats. Then there's this shape. And I hope you can see the difference in the top. It's rounded. Flat top, and these are rounded. So those are called filberts. And then this is a round because it comes to a point. And so then there's those guys, and I have a palette knife. Sometimes I'll use that for mixing paint. Other silicone tools would be, again, you don't feel like you have to have all these. I'm really just showing you kind of like, there's quite an assortment, right? But while we're still talking about brushes and that kind of thing, let me just show you real quickly here the difference in. So here's some heavy body green gold made by Golden. You can see it's, really thick. So if I just want to show you then how, let's see here, I'm not sure if I need that or not. So I just want to show you the difference in shape of these brushes. I mean, it seems so obvious, and I guess it is, but I really want you to see that it does, there are times when you kind of want these different effects. Add a little bit of, this is a heavy body, so I'm going to add a little bit of polymer medium just to, again, change the consistency of the paint. That's what the mediums are going to do. I could have just dipped it in water, and for this purpose, that would have been just fine. But again, here's the flat. And, if you like rectilinear shapes, then this is going to be a really great brush for you. And then, of course, there's all these different widths that you can use. I'll just do another one just to show you, but it's kind of nice to have like a wide, and if you work large scale, I mean, my brush might be 4 inches wide. And to clean out your brush, have some water. I just use yogurt containers. And try not to leave your brush sitting like that. I know it's really tempting because because you know that once the acrylic dries in your brush is pretty doomed unless you use Murphy's oil soap, which is like a miracle product. If you put Murphy's oil soap into a Ziploc and then store just the bristle portion of your brush into the plastic bag and let it sit there for a few days, it's amazing how your brush will actually come back to life. So it is kind of a lifesaver, and I actually have it here just to show you. Didn't want to forget, but this is Murphy's oil soap, and here's my Ziploc. I have one dedicated to my acrylic brushes. Use it over and over again, and you just enough in the bottom of your bag to let the bristles sit in there, and I zip it on the top. And again, you check on it day by day to see how your brush tip is doing. If it's rock hard, you're going to have to wait maybe a week or so. Okay, so those are the flats, and then the filbert is a beautiful shape. Try that one. I use this one a lot, and I never used this until probably in the last year. I guess I just didn't realize how nice they were. But so there are times, like if you like curvilinear shapes, this is a great brush for that. There you go. You get a nice curvilinear shape. And then I'll set that in there for 1 second. And then, of course, another size. In general, it's nice to have 3 different sizes of these brushes, depending on what you're doing. Whoops. This one's not going to be that much more narrow, but I try to clean up my brushes right away, and then I just have I have a towel over here, and then I cover it with a few paper towels so that the bulk of the paint goes into the paper towel, but it's sitting on top of a thirsty towel. Okay, and then just finally, I'll just do one round. This is a round. The way you test a round brush when you go to the store, you're supposed to ask them for water, and they bring you the water, and then you put the brush in there, and then you just kind of whip it in the air, and then you look at the point, and the better the point, the better the brush. Now these are synthetic. These are not the Kolinsky Sable, which I would never buy anyways, but if you're a watercolorist, you probably know about all those very expensive brands. But the thing about the round is that you can get a very thin line. I don't have a rigger. I was hoping that I would get one before they open today, but a rigger just means that it's even thinner than this, and it tends to be a very long bristle. Comes to a point, great for lines. So there you go. That kind of shows you the difference in brush types. Okay, so cover up your paint right away. It's really important. And get my brushes right away. And then I'm going to show you how to make a wet palette. Again, the reason for making the wet palette, it's just a palette, and there are a few components that you need to have. Oh, before I do that, I'm going to put the brushes away. There are a few other tools. We were talking about brushes and brayers and silicone tools. There are obviously all kinds of things that make marks, like this. These little guys that came with my jelly plate. If I had time, I would show you how to make your own collage paper, but we probably won't have time. These you get at Ace Hardware, any hardware store, really inexpensive. This would be a silicone tool. This one's called a Messermeister. It's a bowl scraper. And then, stencils are great. But I make my own a lot of times. And then any kind of mark making material. I've got my mark making, favorites here. I try to go for diversity, thick and thin, dark and light, and that kind of thing. Two other little things, or maybe a few other little things. Razor blade is handy. A pair of tweezers and a very small pair of scissors for cutting out if you do clip art. If you want to do that, either image transfers, or if you wanted to use some clip art for collage. And then I happen to have graphite powder, again, if you like interference colors. A little thing of alcohol, if you like the effect of alcohol. So I could go on and on, but we are going to just stop it right there, because I really just scratched the surface, and I know that you guys have many things that you love to use. Maybe if there's something I didn't cover, you could share with each other something I missed, and that would be fun for others to know about. Okay. Now I mentioned the wet palette, so let's do that now, because this is something that I did learn from Nicholas Wilton many, many years ago. And I was taking one of his workshops, and this was truly a game changer for me. What you need is the cafeteria tray, which is here. And I think it's 14 by 17. Yeah, so you can get, when you look on Amazon, where I actually have this listed on my resource page, but I chose the 14 by 17 size because you need to cover the sandwich with tracing paper. So I happened to find 14 by 17. I kind of look for the tracing paper first, and then I look for a matching size of cafeteria tray, because you kind of want the two to match if possible. So you get your cafeteria tray, and you get some blue shop towels. I happen to cut this to fit, and then you just need some water. So this is clean water, and just dump it on top. And by doing this kind of a palette, you're going to, if you have leftover paint at the end of the day, there are a couple things. Number one, if you can let your brushes sit on the top, you can let your paint be on the top, and then you come back the next day and, 12 hours later, and it should be fine. You can use your paints again. They don't dry out if you use this method. To make it last a little longer, you can take a second cafeteria tray and just flip it upside down and make a clamshell. That locks in the moisture a little bit more. Now, some of this depends on where you live, but again, just you can see how you hold it on the corner until it stops dripping, because you don't want sopping wet. You know, the blue towels are wet, but you kind of just wait until it drips about like that. And when it drips like that, that means that your towels are just about the right wetness for the next part. The next part is you take your tracing paper and just lay it on top. You can just squish it down, but you can see how it fits nicely into this tray. And now this surface here, you can also use parchment paper, I've been told. I've not tried that, but a friend of mine uses parchment paper, but I just use tracing paper. That's the way I was taught. And a lot of times I will have 2 palettes going, because you'll see when I start mixing colors, which I'm going to do right now. And by the way, this is the clamshell thing. You have a spare tray, and if this is the end of the day, you've got lots of paints. One way to extend the life of this longer is to just put this on top, and you know, that's good, especially if you live in a dry climate. But anyways, I'm just going to set this over here. So let's start doing some painting. First of all, are there any questions about anything I've covered so far? This might be a good time just to take a little break.
I think I've answered most of the questions, Pam, in the chat as they came up, because there haven't been any that have been too hard for me.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you, guys. I know a lot of that's color review. So, all right. So one thing that I believe in, you know, technique is important, but my whole thing that I teach is about color and design, and like, you know, what do you do with the paint once it's down there? So, because technique is just something that it's not too hard to figure out many, many different ways to get your paint onto a sheet of paper. So what I'm going to show you right now, first of all, is kind of the process I go through in my Powerful Design course, but I don't do it in acrylic. I do it in cold wax and oil. So I'm going to show you how I mix 5 different values. So if you look at this guy, what I'm talking about is I'm going to include the white and the black on the value finder, and then I'm going to mix 3 grays. Okay, and I all I'm going for is 3 grays that are visually different. And I'm going to actually use a stiffer white, because I'm going to actually use this titanium white made by Graham. It's an acrylic color. You'll see how stiff this is, right? So there's my white. And then I'm going to make 3 piles over here. So there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. Now you don't have to use the heavy body acrylic for this, but I just choose to do that because I know that when I mix the color, and I'm going to use a palette knife, this tracing paper is just a little delicate. You need a kind of a light touch. And I'm going to be working with the monochromatic palette. So I'm choosing to work with, I'm going to just choose Indian Yellow Hue, but we'll get to that in a bit. Then, let's see, I need some black. If I had heavy body black, I would use it, but I don't. So I'm going to put some black here, right there. And then I want 3 values of gray. That's what I'm trying to do. So when I talk about value, I'm talking about how, you know, how gray is it? And there are 10 values on this little value finder. I've got the black and the white, but I've got 3 whites, and I want them to be 3 grays. So I need to add some black. Here's a little bit. Here's a little bit more. And then here's quite a bit more. So just visually, right, this should be 3 different grays that are pretty noticeable. So I'm going to mix with the palette knife and just be kind of gentle against the tracing paper. And I'm hoping this will be a very light gray. I'm going from the lightest to the darkest so that I don't have to keep cleaning off my tool that I'm mixing this with. The heavy body, you know, as you can see, is so different from the fluid acrylics. And I normally use Novacolor, which is a fluid. It's certainly not a heavy body like this, but it's also not like a high flow. So it's somewhere in between. That's a nice light gray. And you want to just make sure that you mix it really well. Then you can, this is light gray, but this is going to go darker. So I can certainly mix this up. And you kind of guess at first as far as, how much black and how much white. But remember, all you're going for is a visible difference. So I've got a light gray. This will be my medium gray. I'm not really touching the tracing paper. I'm trying to just be very gentle. And it doesn't have to be, completely mixed. You can let some of the streakiness be in there if you want. I always tell people that I spend so much time mixing color. And this is my year to really focus on color, because I realize, and you'll see if you don't already know how infinite the number of colors that you can get from one color plus black and white are, you'll see why there are artists throughout time who really spent a whole lifetime just, exploring color, because it is so complex. And it's magical. It's pretty amazing. So I'm going to go this way now and mix the darker value. You can see the difference, hopefully visually, between those two.
So Pam, this is going to be great as we start to enter into the mark making, because we have a show coming up at City Hall called Abstraction.
Ooh.
And this, how you're starting out is with the blacks. Our next show is called Black and White Plus One, which is using black and white plus one color. So you're kind of really hitting into this. So I know that some of the artists are looking forward to your play stage. I haven't given them too much notice on this, but the play stage and how you clarify in a little bit, just a touch on that is going to be great for these next two shows we have coming up.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. When does your show start?
Their submissions are for Black and White Plus One is in April, and then Abstraction is July.
Awesome.
So trust me when I say that having you at this time at the end of January wasn't by happenstance.
Aha.
Hi everyone. I just this is Eileen, and I just wanted to say that Leanne Hamilton will be doing that next workshop.
Awesome.
Yeah, and actually she is here in the as one of the participants. So I don't know if Leanne, you want to say hi, maybe either now or it could be at the end.
Let's wait till the end.
Yeah. So yeah, Leanne, if you do want to say hi to everyone. Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you get back to it.
Okay, so we've got our 5 values. And again, here's the value finder. Here's the white, and then here's the black. And then just, 3 grays. Don't worry about, you want one that's kind of a light gray, a middle gray, and a dark gray. And that could go darker, that could go lighter, but you're just looking for a visible difference here. And now I'm just choosing one color. It doesn't matter what color you choose. You may have a favorite, but I'm just choosing this one because I thought it would be kind of fun to try this one. This is a heavy body acrylic, and I've not used this particular one yet. So I'm going to just make a little bit here and here. And I'm kind of just preparing. Now you can kind of see how working with one color, if working with one color takes up this entire palette, when you start to work in a complement or a triad, or how about 4 colors, that's why I start to have multiple palettes, because things get a little bit really messy and hard to keep control of if you've got a whole lot of colors. And that's when you start to realize that you don't have to have every color in your paint box to be able to do a painting. Okay, so I'm taking my arches, checking the back to make sure it says watercolor paper, and it does. And again, I've got white tape around it, and I actually made a template recently just out of Bristol board so that I could make these quickly, because I do this a lot. I do this in workshops, and I do it in, I do this for all different kinds of mediums. So I'm just going to turn it that way. The first thing that I do personally, and I have to stress that this is not for everybody, because if you're like a portrait artist or if you're a realist artist, you may want to start in a totally different way. On the other hand, even if you were one of those types of artists, there's nothing saying that the marks are going to remain. So what I like to do is I do like to start out with marks. And part of that is like getting to know my space, like how much space do I have to work on? And I'm looking at this 14 by 17 inch sheet as one. I'm not thinking of 4 quadrants. I'm thinking of this as one. So the white tape helps because I don't see like a blue tape border. That would be a little bit more distracting. I used to always have blue tape on there. And then I just decided that even though the white tape is more expensive, that for me visually to not have that blue tape on there was really nice. This is a Graphic Critey, another favorite mark making tool. And I list all of my favorite mark making dry media on my resource page because that's where I shop. That's where I go to buy my stuff. This is a woody. It's water soluble, but it's also like, what I'm looking for is how dark can I go? Like which of all these is going to give me the darkest dark? I know that the woody's one of them, just from experience, and they come in all different colors, but, and also I'm trying to, like mix up my marks. Like I didn't have a curve there. So maybe I'll just add a curve there. I've got a lot of curves here, but I've also got rectilinear. I'm not thinking, by the way, I'm really just playing. But after all, I am an adult. So even my play stage will have just, I'm trying to push all these things that are happening. This is a art graph, and this will give me a nice dark as well. You can, what I think of, and I do call this my play stage, but what I'm trying to do, which is what I know you'll try to do, is, you have X number of tools here. You've got X number of paints. You've got X number of everything. But to me, everything you have in your studio goes into that category of, your art is a science, and everything you have, if this was the only mark making tool you had, I would challenge you to find 100 ways to make 100 different marks. And because, sometimes you have to do that when you don't have a variety of things. So again, there's the dark line, there's the light line, there's a curvilinear line, there's, get out my, I can find it in a second. Here for my painter's edge. Well, I guess I'll just have to use a ruler. I don't know what happened to my painter's edge. It's probably underneath one of these boxes. But so I don't really have, like I always ask myself, what don't I have? And at this point, I don't have any super rectilinear straight lines. So just in this mark making phase. And again, I'm ignoring the borders. I don't care if it's in the center, because right now I'm playing and my job is not to think. So I'm really good at that. That's what I figured out. I'm really good at not thinking. Okay, so that's enough marks because, we have limited time. And, you could do things like take a cosmetic puff and just see what smears. Maybe some of these things smear more than others. And then I also just want to show you real quickly, because I always get this question, how do I prevent my marks from smearing? And I don't really worry about that very much, but here's some deli paper, which you could use wax paper, freezer paper, anything. And I'm going to use, you could use polymer medium, but again, it's all about how thick or thin, I'm using something that has no texture, and I'm using a gel medium, which I can really, really thin out. What I don't want, because I might have a water-soluble mark on my paper here, and if I use a very watery medium, then I might smear the mark. What I'm trying to do is show you how to fix the mark. So maybe I want to fix that smear. Put this on top and just, again, this could be deli paper, it could be wax paper, it doesn't matter what it is. Now, I'm not going to be really careful, but if I wanted to really make sure to lock this in, I'd probably do another coat, do this again. You can kind of see on here a little bit came off, not much. Again, I'm not going to worry about that. That might smear, but just keep in mind that a thin layer on something that's not very textured is going to give you pretty good results. So now I have done that. That's just the beginning. Now I've got all these lovely grays and I've got my Indian yellow hue. And a hue just means that, you know, it's not the full strength that it would normally be. So I have to decide, you know, what do you want to do first? I've got my acrylic polymer medium here, sitting here. I've got my airbrush medium here, and I do have the gel if I need it. Like maybe I'll try some collage paper. I don't know. I kind of let the work tell me what it wants to be. So maybe I'll start out with one of my silicone tools. It doesn't matter really. But I'm thinking, okay, let's just try the full strength because I don't know. I have not used this hue. I have not used the heavy body. So I'm really just curious what's going to happen. Now, this is just one width, right? And that's fine. But things get a little boring if you don't mix things up. So I could go really wide with this Messermeister. But again, if I go back into that very same thing, I often will change it with a medium or a gray. So in this case, here's my polymer medium. No, I hope you can see that. Okay. I'm going to just take a tiny bit of this because this is opaque and this is transparent. That's one reason I chose the Indian yellow is because it is a transparent, but I want to change that color a little bit. I mean, why would I go in there with the very same thing when I can have this? And maybe just a little bit more and a little bit more of that. So you know, the thing about personal color is when you have your palette sitting in front of you, you just keep mixing until you find a color you like. There's nobody hovering over you saying you have to stop now. There's a lovely gray. And it's always funny how, to me, yellow goes greenish when you mix it with black. Okay, so there's that. And so what I've done here, and this is also, by the way, working in a series, right? I've got 4 paintings that are going to speak to one another. Hopefully they won't yell at each other. But so again, maybe I'll try some airbrush medium this time. Different fluidity. You should expect something different. And again, you are the scientist in your studio. What's going to happen? It's always a question of like, what's going to happen? And I think for me, like my fascination is not knowing. Now that's a little streaky and it's just an observation and you can drag through. Now here it's hit this art graph, which is water soluble, which I didn't fix. And I like that. I'm not going to worry about it. Let's add some solid yellow. All right, now, again, this is just one color. And my only job here is to make observations. I'm not thinking about composition. I'm more thinking like, okay, what don't I have yet? What haven't I used yet? What could I try that's different? What's exciting? You know, and there's so many different tools here to try. So now I've got this mid-tone gray. Let me add some of that. And that's almost like a 1-to-1. And you keep mixing it until you like the value, you like the color. I could add some black. If I add black, then it's kind of like as if I'd added this gray. But for now, I just want to see what this is all about. You can take, again, some deli paper and just kind of make some marks on it like this. Set that down. This would be like a monoprint. Now, where don't I have this color? Where would these marks be kind of interesting? Maybe here. And you just lay it down and sheet left. So it'll be lighter, but whoops, it's all like the whole thing about a series is repetition of something. So in this series, I got repetition of format, which is 5 by 7. I got repetition of marks, these dark and these light and curvilinear and rectilinear. Now I've got repetition of this one color, plus white, plus black, plus the grays. Now, so speaking of that, let me grab my Indian yellow again. So these are tones. Anything mixed with these grays is going to be a tone, but I haven't done just a tint. So if I put my yellow up here, and I could use this same yellow as the black. If I mix my yellow with just the white, so it's not contaminated with any black. I'm saying contaminated just because it's easier to think of it as like it's a pure color. Maybe I'll take my round and I want to make a tint. So a tint is when you take your color and you only add white. Now there's a lot of white, it's heavy body versus these are both heavy body here. So, but look at how it's pasty, it's very light, it's very thick. And you know, what can I do with this paint? Yeah, I can use my brush, of course. And this I'm not even letting it dry. I'm not worrying about that. And a child would not worry about it either. So now that's not to say that you shouldn't let it dry. You can, but I hear a lot of students say, oh, I can't do this because my paint dries too fast. Well, I'm really just trying to show you that you can do a lot before your paint even dries. Here's a different quality of line. What happens, I'm saying to myself, like, what happens when I go over that gray? And what happens if I lift pressure and twist my brush and just continue on like this? You don't have to go fast. What happens if I twirl my brush as I go over this lovely patch of bright, intense color? Clean up my brush. You could have a slop board too, which is just either, in this case, a piece of paper, or it could be a board. A slop board is something where you don't have to you don't waste any paint. All right, so at this point, I have my grays mixed with the color. I've got a little bit now of the tint. Let's grab another, this 1 inch here. Grab some more of that nice light. Maybe add a little bit more yellow. Just because I could have just used the very same, but why when I can change it? You could add a little bit of gray, but then it's not a tint anymore. So if I just want to explore tints right now, you can take a piece of, again, I'm just using deli paper, but keep in mind, there's nothing magic about deli paper. This happens to be here. But I love shape. And when you think about shape, there's torn edges, there's cut edges, there's rectilinear edges, there's curvilinear edges. What if I want this color like right here? So I can make my own stencil. I don't have to only use store-bought stencils, and just go over. And because I do have some wet paint underneath, notice that my tool is almost parallel to the surface, just to not disturb what's underneath it as much as possible. Unless you want to disturb it, that's okay too. But I'm really just trying to get part of the shape onto my painting, and I want it to be kind of solid. So you just keep working with it until it's the way you like it, and then you've got this negative space, right? And if you like it, like I like it, then maybe I'll stick it up here, because that got kind of murky and it's dark. So that would be a good place to stick it. And then just squish it down. I've transferred that color over. Let's see, what don't I have? Like, I've got some, like this quadrant here. I'm really not, I'm trying not to think, but I'm just trying to think, what don't I have? So I've got this very vibrant saturated color in 3 quadrants. And when I just look at this thing, I feel like there could be some more of that down here. And so take this, and just so I don't waste this paint, maybe I'll just do something like this. You want to see a dry brush edge. So those of you who like to work in watercolor, there's a dry brush. This can be sort of my slop board as well as my painting. Just get a lot of that paint off. Why not? And then I just going to use a paper towel here. Okay, so I was saying that I want to liquefy my some of this Indian yellow a little bit more. Maybe I even want kind of drippy. So maybe I'll use, so now I want it super liquidy because I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Let me turn this around so that you can see it better. Here's my Indian yellow hue, and I don't want much of it. I really want a puddle. Because, whoops, don't go near that. I want it to be super light and super fluid and just play with it. Maybe I want some drips because that's different. I don't already have that. And maybe I want to go a little darker. Okay, this is the quadrant that was kind of lacking in this color. So I'm gonna kind of make that a little more intense, but not as intense as that, and not the same shape. So I have options here. This is my round brush. I'm getting kind of a wash. So I'm adding the color. And let's say that I want to then lose an edge. So again, if you're a watercolorist, you know all about lost and found edges. You grab some of this airbrush medium and just, I can make that really blend and disappear. It's very subtle, but acrylic, if you thin it out enough, you know, it's very much like watercolor. So that's fun. All right, what are some other things that we can do? I've got stencils. I talked about stencils. Now, normally I would not do spray paint inside of here, but let's see if that's dry. Not exactly. I was trying to kind of find a dry-ish area, and maybe I'll just, not sure what's going to happen here, but okay, so a couple things. Well, normally, and just so you know, normally I'd be spray painting probably outside, but just for the heck of it. And one thing I haven't done yet, I've torn shapes out of here, but I haven't actually cut one out. So let's just try cutting one out, see what happens. A lot of times I like to overlap different stencils, and I also like to change the edge. So like here are 3 cut edges, but I don't, you know, like I don't want it all the same. So maybe I'll tear one of those edges, and then I just created my new stencil. Okay. So I've got a positive and I got a negative, but here's this guy, and like, what I want to do. I'm not sure if I'll use that crazy edge. I could just, and I also want to maybe overlap the tape. So I'm going to place that very carefully. So it's kind of going off the edge, and I've got this black spray paint. I can shake it. Whoops, that didn't work. I think my tip just came off. Maybe this is the one that doesn't have a tip.
You know, I learned a great little tip about spray paint, and that is to heat your spray paint can up a little bit using some warm water, and the flow is so much better. You get less clogs and stuff. And boy, that was like a lifesaver, huh, Carrie? That was, it's just, it makes such a difference.
Say that again. So you soak the tip in warm water?
No, you soak the whole can.
Oh, wow.
So it kind of warms up the viscosity, so it doesn't clump up and sort of spray sideways as much. And I use a little alcohol on the tip just to make sure it's clean.
That's cool. I think I'm not going to do that because I can't find the right black that I had. So I'm going to do something different. I'm still going to use a stencil, but this might be better anyways because a lot of people don't want to bother with spray paint. That's a really good tip though, Cheryl. Definitely have to try that. So I just found that as far as stencils go, they're great, but in order to get like really good, I like to call it like, fidelity, I guess, you really want it to be very accurate, I guess, if you're going to use a stencil. So I'm using like let's see, that's Nova Color. If I had a heavy body black, I would probably use that. But I want to get out like as much water as I can because it'll just be easier. And then you just kind of dab. I go straight down like this. Because the more fluid it is, the more it's going to creep underneath your stencil. And then you just decide how much of this you want. And I know that stencils are nothing new. But I'm going to catch this edge down here. I think it's still pretty dry. So I don't want all these to be the same. So I'm going to like kind of fade things out and let them get lighter and lighter. And here they're getting bigger, and that's probably on the taped edge. I don't know, but anyways. So then you get that. Let's see. As far as collage paper goes, you don't necessarily have to wait until everything dries. If you happen to like, metal leaf papers, not everybody does, but they're kind of fun. And I have a way of like attaching this onto the carrier sheet so that you have more control. If anyone's worked with these before, you know how they just fly away, and that can be fine, but depends on what you want. So I'm just going to cut into this. So I like it because I have a lot more control over the shapes that I can cut or tear. You can tear it as well. And just sort of like that. And maybe I'll fold that in half. That's why I like to have this small pair of really manicure scissors, because the bigger ones are just too hard to handle. And maybe I'll tear my part of the center. Okay, so then I could use just regular polymer medium, but I think I'm going to use the gel again.
So, question, Pam, could you use alcohol ink with these other mediums?
Yes,
at this point?
Sure, you could. Yeah, that's a great idea. Anything that's water soluble, including watercolor, could be used with watercolor, let it dry, and then come in on top of that with your acrylic. Your acrylics can also be an underpainting for oil and cold wax medium. So I'm just going to stick this guy. I know where the tape is. I can see it. So I'm just going to stick that down. I could have done that with polymer medium, but I did it. And I'll just stick it somewhere. So even though you can see that this bled, but I just like it did smear, but then I didn't like that. So then I just picked it up with the silicone tool. So that's the other thing you can do. I mean, it's adding and subtracting. Yeah, I've just started to use some alcohol inks with encaustic, just a little bit, just for like these final touches, and that's kind of fun. All right, what else? We've got all these grays. I haven't used any of the shades yet. So the shades would just be the color plus black. So that'll go really dark. Just water. Okay, so now we take the color, add it to just the black. You don't need much black to go a long, long way. But you need more color. Oops. Now that would be a shade. And that's really a beautiful, rich color. Very golden. So maybe the first thing is just to try that. Let me take a brush. Take my round again. A little bit of acrylic polymer medium to that. It's a little thick. Kind of want a nice, thick, juicy. You know, sometimes you want it to be really thick too. That's another thing, like highly textured and thick versus very thin washes here. And just making a pattern. Trying to see where I might be able to use this color some more. It is a round, so and once you've got, since that is so juicy right there, you can kind of duplicate that a little bit. I don't want to lift too much of this, just some of it. And do a monoprint somewhere. Let's see. Around. I like to turn things around. Let's go darker. Let's take more. Again, I just want a shade. This will be really dark. Again, kind of pushing the tool. So all the observations you make with your tools, whether it's a squeegee tool or some dry medium or whatever it is, I mean, you kind of make these mental notes of what is happening, and I just think you'll remember, or you can write it down. But these squeegees are really great for more rectilinear shapes.
No, I have found that since I started using these, I almost don't use a brush anymore.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm not surprised. So, I mean, brushes are great, but there's so many other tools you can use. And then, like, if you want to lift, you can make it lighter. Let's see here. I could go over this part of it and just take that, and I haven't done it here yet. I lightened it a little bit. But then you can, let's see here. See, I'm already starting to need another palette here. Doesn't take long before I need that. Let's go with some of this again. I want to make kind of a light washy some of this, I think. And I don't want it to be just that totally saturated color, so I can add, let's see, how about some mid-tone gray? I'm always looking at like, what do I have? And if it's too close to something I already have, then I'm going to adjust it. So maybe I'll add some more white. You don't have to add white to the whole thing. Just pick off a corner and adjust it there. And then for this. Okay, let's see. So I spent a lot of time just like trying to think about, because I do love interesting and unusual shapes. So I try to, and I also love pattern, and I like complex color. I basically like anything that I haven't really done before or seen before. I don't want to be bored by the same old thing. So I guess that's why making your own stencils is really fun, because you know they're going to be different from probably what you've done before. Okay, so I have to remember what color I just mixed. Okay, I think I was going to do something here, even though it's not completely dry. It's okay. I'll go like this. And maybe the best thing, sometimes a squeegee does work better than a brush. So let's see. You can use the squeegee to get the paint off your brush too. Okay. So make these stencils just all the time. Let's try some different, how about some collage paper? So this is a limited palette, but some of the cool things that can happen are like, when you get to this point, you might say, well, I'm okay with a monochromatic palette, but maybe I want to try surprise color. I'm not saying that this would be right, but this is just a stencil transfer that I made with a stencil. This is way too bright, so that's okay. What else do I have? I love to collect various collage papers and let's kind of play with them. Move it around. So if I want to add it and I've got wet paint, then what I'm going to do is instead of like putting the either the gel medium or the polymer medium on wet paint, you can just put it on the back side of your paper if it's big enough. So take this and see how we want. This isn't terribly thick, but I still think that the gel is easier than the drippy polymer medium. And take some of my deli paper again, smush it down. Oh, I just must have hit some white paint.
Those are the happy mistakes.
Yeah, there's never enough white. Yeah, let's see, what can we do with that white? This guy. Smush it down. It really jumps out. Here's a little bicycle. I guess that kind of blends. Why not? So obviously you guys all sand and do all those kinds of things. This is a really dirty sand block. Wow. I don't know what it looks like. I used some something, red paint or something with that one, but let me grab some sandpaper. I mean, usually I would sand it on top of the painting itself, but this is just, 100 sandpaper, and sometimes I like to just sand. So it's not too terribly literal. And let's see. Can tear it too. Okay, this one needs some gel. Push it down. I think this white paint is just like wanting to be a monoprint. It's still wet. So. Okay, so I really just wanted to kind of show you this whole play thing, and this is the process. It can be done with any medium, doesn't matter what it is. Play is different for every artist, and just again, like just because I use marks, for example, doesn't mean that you have to use marks. And I just wanted to show you kind of like the process of working with grays and tints and tones. This has a ways to go yet, but this is another thing that I like to use. I do have the white tape, but sometimes it's very hard to see what's going on. So I like to make these mats out of this plastic. And then that helps me just to see kind of, like a preview of what's going on so that I can finish the composition. Very hard to finish a composition when you can't tell what is part of your painting and what is part of your border. And then what I did yesterday was play around with some other colors. Well, I guess this one was the quinacridone nickel azo gold. This one has some collage on it. And so I get to finish these later on. And then all you have to do is, if you get some paint on the back side of these mats, all you have to do is grab a little bit of, either before it's dry or not, I don't think it really matters. I just like to use some alcohol. And this is green.
Did you say, Pam, that red was quinacridone gold?
Yeah, nickel azo quinacridone gold.
Okay. And we have someone that would like to see a close-up of the one that we were working on to see some of your marks.
Here. Okay, hang on 1 second.
And another question is, how does one know when you're done with the play stage?
Well, I do think that one does kind of lead into the other. For me, it's kind of like, okay, do I have enough interest? Like, has whatever I've done in the play stage piqued my interest? Are there enough things happening that speak to me that I might want to feature? So, this gets into design. It's all about, like, for example, if I loved that mark in this, now okay, so to know when it is time to move on from play into the explore stage, there has to be kind of enough play and shapes and everything, marks and all the things that you love, so that there's something to choose from. But then in the explore stage, it's kind of like you probably have too many of those things. So it's a matter of selecting, which things are more important to you in every quadrant now. You start to think in terms of, this is now 4 paintings, like in the play stage it's 1, but in the explore stage, things become, there are 4 paintings now, and each one needs to stand on its own. And then, so there's a lot of like, you add and subtract, you keep layering, you keep adding paint, or maybe you start to sand, or if you collage, you cover something up. It's just a matter of, it's a very malleable phase, and there is no like black and white area when play is over and explore begins, and then it's not a black and white area when explore ends and clarify begins. It's really a very flexible and intuitive process. So that's why there are no heavy and hard, fast rules. In art, it's a feeling, and it really, that's the thing about abstraction for me, and I'm guessing for you as well, that it does require you to really look inward, to kind of explore every nook and cranny of your painting, and say, like, for instance, like in this play stage, as I start to progress with each one of these, I'm going to be questioning every mark I have, every shape I have, every color I have. Is there too much texture? Is there not enough texture? Is the paint too thin? Is it too thick? Those are the questions you ask yourself. And ideally, you don't quit until you're really happy with it. And I strive for love, but I do think that's a very high standard. And I myself feel like I very rarely get to that point where I love everything. But I was explaining to somebody the other day is that, these are kind of like our children. Our children are not perfect, right? But there's a lot of things we love about our children. And we're happy, right? We can be happy and pleased and proud and be satisfied when our painting is like captured something that speaks to us. It evokes an emotion. That's what we're after. I think that is the answer. Like, does this evoke an emotion to me? Some of these do. But I kind of like, if I had 1 strong one and 3 weak ones on a 4 square like this, I'd probably want to work on the 3 to get them to what that one was doing for me, and then progress on with the entire series. So it's kind of like, let's get all 4 children on the same page here, and then move on into the explore stage. And, sometimes things can go from play to the end very quickly. And I think the longer you paint, part of that is knowing what you personally want, knowing who you are as an artist, and knowing when to stop. If I thought this was done, I would say stop now. There's nothing saying that this can't be done in 5 minutes, in 1 minute, and sometimes that might be your favorite painting. So there's no rule about how long you have your painting, how many layers you have to have, how many shapes you have to have, how much time you spent. None of that matters at all, So I just wanted to show, though, that I did work on, like, this one's the complementary. So This one was the ultramarine blue, and I used the nickel azo gold on this one. Used a little bit of black and white collage paper on this one. And just, again, for me, everything is like starting for the first time. It's like beginning, because I'm using my tools in a way I hadn't used before. Always trying to push my tools, the mediums, the paint, combinations of paint, you know. So there's just never any reason to be bored with what you're doing. Just keep going. And okay, so now let's see.
You know, it's funny, Pam, that you should mention kids and children, because I just want to tell you that I recently, so Pam's sons they do this superfood called Voctabs. And I learned this because I've taken a class with Pam, and I'm actually still in that class. And I just want to tell you, Pam, they're amazing. I have so much more energy, and I only take one a day, but
Wow.
it's just really, it's really been marvelous. So I'm going to put those, a link to those Voctabs in the chat for people, and so that they can check those out. And Pam has offered a coupon for the Voctabs. Like I said, they're all natural. It's 25% off your first order. I got 2 boxes, and I just love them.
Thank you. I do have some artist friends who are, I don't know if any of you know Jane Kenyon in Canada, but she swears by them. She came to my studio and she was painting away, and this is the product that we're, you know, that Cheryl's talking about. This is our son's product. It's a superfood, and she says she takes one a day. Inside a packet like this are 2, and I take like 4 a day. So maybe that explains why I'm kind of probably hyper at times, but it doesn't make you hyper. It's just that I need energy. I need, like, you know, we all need a different amount of energy to do what we do. And thank you, Cheryl, for mentioning that. Okay, so then some other little things, like some other techniques, which I'm sure you're all very much aware of, would be like glazing, for example. But, you know, any painting can be greatly enhanced with glazing. And I'm going to just take my other palette here. And when we talk about glazing, let's see here, here's the palette. I prepared this beforehand so that we could kind of move into the next thing. Let's see here. Okay, so I just put another piece of paper over that. It's already been soaked with water. Certain colors are going to be better for glazing. Just that's true in any medium that you use. So some of my favorites are any of the quinacridones are going to be a good glaze. Any of the phthalos are going to be a good glaze. So I've got these 2, and then here's my phthalo, this golden turquoise phthalo. But you can take a color that's not necessarily meant for glazing. Like, let's take some cadmium red light. Now, I was just going over this in another Zoom class that I did with oils, but on your tube, especially with golden, which I love, is they do these little black hash marks, and then they do a paint swatch over it. So when you buy it, you can tell right away how transparent that is. So compare that one to, let's see, I'm going to take one that is known to be transparent, and this one is Viridian. You can see those black marks much better. And then on the tube, let's see if this tells you. Usually it'll tell you if it's transparent or not. And every brand is different. So trying to see if this actually tells you. I've been looking so much at oil tubes. Well, they may not tell you. I think what they're doing is they are telling you by doing this, which is very special. And I have not seen another company actually do this. They're telling you just with their swatch. So if I take cadmium red light, for example, very vibrant color. Might need a little bit more of that. And I'm going to use, let's see here, how about some quinacridone crimson. These don't really need to be shaken, but So here's comparing two reds. Now these are very different reds as well. This is where color gets kind of complex, but we have warm reds and we have cool reds. We have warm blues and cool blues, just like we have warm yellows and cool yellows. And that's where color gets really complex. And that's why we end up with mud when we're not expecting it or don't want it. And other times we want it or maybe don't know how to get it. So first of all, it's, straight out of the bottle or the tube. I mean, this is really intense. I'm going to just put some here. And that's very intense. That's full strength. But if I'm glazing, like even if it's a glazing color, then I might have to add a medium to it. And I'm going to just add some of this airbrush medium to my quinacridone crimson here. There's also quinacridone red, and sometimes I get them mixed up. But so that's full strength. But we're talking about glazing. So, if you want to glaze, there's the difference. And again, that's it. It's all like, well, how does it impact the colors beneath? What are the colors beneath? And this is pretty thinned out now, so I can just change the whole nature of this painting, starting with the quinacridone crimson. And you can see what it looks like warm over earth. This is actually a cool red, but it's over a warm underpainting here. And then it's starting to go over a color that is across the color wheel. So red and green now are kind of fighting with each other. And some people might say, wow, that looks really muddy, murky, whatever. Well, yeah, it should, because they're complements and they couldn't be more different from one another. So, when you glaze though, it's a matter of addition and subtraction. You always have full control over how much or how little that, you want to have on there. So let's say that I want to lift some of this, and I've used textured paper towels and gotten the texture of the paper towel. So you kind of have to watch what you're using. This is I like the Blue Shop towel because it's so smooth, but you can see that you can lift a lot. You have control. I can lift this very vibrant red and have a lot less of it while it's still wet. Well, there's still a bit of it, but still. But if you do this, you can. I like the end of this brush. What else? We could take some of this golden turquoise and add some of this polymer.
And for those of you who are going to submit to the Black and White +1 show, glazing is another way to utilize your three colors instead of just painting with Black and White +1.
That's an exciting show. So who comes up with the ideas for the different themes of your shows?
We typically have a meeting once a year, which is our open board meeting. And people throw out ideas and we write them all down, and we typically get around 50. And then we have to weed those down to 3.
That's awesome.
And so the board takes a vote on those. Some, might be too close to something we've done before. We try to not eliminate different artists in their different mediums, like this Black and White. If +1 still would incorporate sculpture. If you are a photographer and do any digital editing, you could do a color pop on a photo. So we try to include everyone, but it doesn't always work.
I see what you're saying, but that's very cool. Must be fun. By the time you come up with your theme, it's like, you got a lot of people interested in it. And
yeah, and these are, for these shows, they're hung at City Hall, so it's kind of an art in a public space.
Nice.
That was really the first, genesis of our Rancho Cordova Arts.
Cool. Okay, so then you can also do something where you gradate your colors. You just gradually thin them out. And the way to do that is just to add more of your medium. You can do it directly onto your panel. I also worked in some collage paper into this, so that's why it's getting caught up in the tissue paper there. Okay, so that's just an idea of like glazing, and it's a power tool. And it's in acrylic and watercolors, it's all, a lot of glazing occurs. When I work with oil and cold wax, then I kind of reserve glazing, sometimes more towards the end. And I wanted to show you guys a little bit about these interference colors, just because, again, they are kind of unique. And so I had prepared this little guy here, just showing you what happens. So it's very helpful then if you're going to work with interference colors, and they will say interference on them. And again, you can kind of see how transparent they are. There's the little black hash marks. They're all meant to be super transparent. And the funny thing is, like, straight out of the bottle or tube, because they come in tube form too, but this says interference blue, interference violet, and interference red. But all three of these look about the same, and they don't show their personality until they're on top of something like another color or something dark. So let's just try the red. I just wanted to show you this really quickly here. So here's the red, and IR is interference red. So I wanted to show you how it is just over black. And this is a black gesso board. So first of all, it does have a red cast to it. And then depending on what it goes over, so this is quinacridone crimson. And this is quinacridone nickel azo gold. Not sure if it's going to show that differently. And this is phthalo turquoise. So that's the red. Let's try the blue. Here's just the plain color. So there's violet, there's the violet, there's orange, there's green. But they do tend to really sparkle over these darker colors.
Does it have somewhat of a shine or a gloss to it?
I mean, it's just strange. I don't really know how to describe it. All I can say is that, like, once it's dry, it looks metallic. So for those people who happen to like things that are metallic, okay, this is the violet. Okay, so there's that little demo. Okay, and I just watched the time, Cheryl. We were going to reserve like a half an hour for questions. So now we're at almost at the top of the hour. So I wonder if we should open this up for questions, if anybody.
Does anybody have any questions? Now is the time. Okay, Carrie, go ahead and unmute yourself, Carrie.
There we go. Sorry. So first of all, thank you, Pam. I'm very excited. I'm in your Powerful Design Personal Color class right now, and I'm really enjoying it. I think my main question was, I do a lot of monotype printmaking, and I'm wanting to get that cold wax medium effect on top of that. So you probably already cover it in your class, but I was just wondering, for those of us that do printmaking or watercolor, to get that cold wax, do you have to put like a clear gesso over the top before you actually use the cold wax over that paper?
Are you talking about you're putting just cold wax or cold wax plus oil color over like a watercolor or acrylic?
Yes.
Okay.
No, yeah, the second, what you just said.
Okay. So
Okay.
cold wax medium and oil paint. It's always the oil paint that has the acid in it. And depending on, again, cold wax medium has a little bit of, it actually doesn't have the acid in it, but it does have the Galkyd in it, which is a resin. So let me just think here. I have heard of some people putting just straight cold wax medium over watercolors. And I haven't done that myself, but I've heard other people have done it. I think that should be okay. Yeah, I use the clear gesso. It's kind of a weird substance because when it dries, it's kind of like sandpaper, and I don't really like that. But on the other hand, if you're trying to make sure you've got that physical adhesion, plus you're protecting if the paper that you've done your acrylic on, what kind of paper or substrate are you using?
It's a BF, it's Reeves. It's a real thick printmaking paper. It's the, BFK Reeves.
Are you the one who asked that question that's on the call tomorrow about the Reeves BFK?
No.
All right, I was just curious because that question's coming up for tomorrow too. So Reeves BFK is a printmaking paper, and so you've put acrylic over that, and so you kind of sealed the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, let's just put it this way: you can go directly into oil and cold wax, no problem.
Okay.
But what I would do is one of two things: either the Liquitex clear gesso, which I have it somewhere, or you can just lightly sand it with like a gritty sandpaper, like this one is a P100. It's pretty, because what you're trying to do is create a physical
binding.
Bond
Okay.
between. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Any other questions about anything?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
First of all, when you're doing your series, do you usually, so let's just say you finished all 4 of those.
Okay.
Do you frame them, or do you sell them, or do you give them to your students, or what do you do with them?
Yeah, well, okay. And I think that's partly a question about, what do you do with these small works? And because I teach, and when I go to teach, depends on who I'm teaching with. If it's Bellissima Artscapes, all the students, and there can be like 14, and they all get a free painting. So they all get a 5x7. Or if you have a show coming up, I tend to frame behind glass, and I can show you some quick examples of how I have framed. I framed more of the oil and cold wax behind glass. Let me just grab them real quick because they're over here, but they are the 5x7 size.
And I will tell you that one of the things that I have done in using these as these 4 is I then cut them out. And when somebody buys a piece of my art, I use that as my thank you card, and it gives them a second piece of art that then I let them frame, but it's sort of a memento of thank you for buying my art.
It's so nice. I love that. Why not, right? So here's one where it's kind of a shadow box. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a gap.
Yes.
And I kind of like that gap because it kind of sets the art apart. Other times the mat's just sitting on top of the work. That one's behind glass. And then another way to do it, these are just all ways I've experimented with. This one also has a mat, and I like to use just a Baltic birch frame, but it's kind of like the paper is attached to the back mat board, which is the same color as the top mat board, which then it's like a shadow box, set back like that. So there are some different ways to frame these that, they're pretty nice. And, when you're in a gallery, like I have a show right now, hang on. I'll put this down.
And I too am in that, I'm taking one of Pam's classes, and I got to tell you that this is the first class I've taken since I've been out of art school.
Ooh.
And I graduated in 1997, and I've learned more in that class that I can now put into my art, and it's led me down a path that I'm so excited about. I can't tell you enough.
It's awesome. Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate that. Is that the Powerful Design class?
It's the cold wax, medium, oil and cold wax, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, just so that you know, if any of you decide that you want to take that course, it's all online, it's all self-paced, self-directed, and it's like, I don't know, 12 hours of video. And it's of me painting 16 of these 5x7 paintings in 4 palettes, talking about color mixing. And even though I work in the cold wax medium and oil medium, because the emphasis is on color and design, it's more about your personal voice and creating work that you really love, creating your best art. It's not independent, it's not dependent on medium. And it's funny how many times say, oh, I can't do this in watercolor, and it's like, well, yes, you can. And I know that because I've done it myself. But anyway, so there are discounts on like everything for your group alone. Like there are some discounts that Cheryl's going to share with you after this is all over with. But I also wanted to show you, we didn't have time to do this, and I just did an image transfer, which came out pretty well last night. It's just yet another technique, but I just thought it was kind of funny because of the dog that I chose. So I wanted to show you that. Yeah, any other questions? You guys are quiet.
Hello.
Hello.
That's exactly what I'm interested in doing, is that transfer. I don't know how to do that. But thank you, Cheryl, especially for including me in this. And Pam, I really appreciate your time. And I want to I want to do the cold wax because I like collage and the layering. I love the layering effect. So I'd love to get in on that class. I don't know, where is it available? How do I sign up?
I will be sending you the links so that you can sign up, and I can tell you it is chock full of things that you will use in all of your art. Just the thought process that you go through, the 9 steps that Pam has developed in her more than 30 years of art and teaching that really helped me evaluate and better ask questions of what's in front of me. But I will be sending all of you that are participating in an email after this, the links and promo codes for what to put in there. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this so much too, because I've been so isolated, like so many of us, but I am isolated in my studio, and it's always helpful and encouraging to be around other artists and just to talk about the process. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's wonderful. I agree. We are so isolated. And I had several workshops that were postponed or canceled in 2020. I was supposed to teach in New Zealand. I had 3 workshops that were scheduled and 1 in Vienna, and they were all like either postponed or canceled. So I think Zoom is the way we're going forward right now. And I just love to see you guys. And this is a new group for me. So thank you for joining in. I really appreciate it, because this is a Saturday and you didn't have to be here, but you are. So I hope that, I kind of had the feeling a lot of you are probably more advanced, but I hope it wasn't too boring or that you learned something.
Yeah. The one thing I think, I'll get to you 1 second, Cynthia, you'll be next. The one thing I will say, Pam, is after years and years of doing my own art and going through art school and all of that, sometimes it's just about watching somebody else do it, something that is the thing to do, but you've sort of forgotten about it because there are so many other things that sort of flood to the front of your mind. Just a little technique that can really take on a whole new meaning. So
yeah,
even the simplest things are, I think, very good. Cynthia, go ahead.
Well, I'm actually fairly new to abstract painting, and so I had 2 questions just about the process. What I gathered from that was play, explore, and clarify. If there's others, I'm not sure. And then the other thing that I found interesting was at the beginning you were talking about an encaustic look that you could achieve with acrylics.
Right. Yes.
I don't know what class that would be in or any of them, really.
Okay. Yeah, I can just give you a little bit of a background. So, okay, so you're talking about abstraction and you're talking about that final varnish that I do. So I have two solely acrylic courses. The first one was created because people who are in the powerful design and personal color, because I work in cold wax and oil, and I wanted to have something for those people who are acrylic artists who could kind of see me do the very same things that I do in the powerful design course, and say, yes, I can do PDPC, and that's what I call it. So that's the acrylic and mixed media technique course, and at the end there's bonus material. The bonus material covers, and I kind of had to relook at this because it's been a while since I launched that course, but just the bonus material in the acrylic and mixed media techniques course has information on the image transfers, paint transfers, stencil transfers, how to make, use that Mighty Board plastic to make your own stencils, collaging with metal leaf, how to use a jelly plate. And I did an experiment with golden open medium, so you can kind of see that experiment and how it prolongs the usability of your acrylics. And I do a comprehensive comparison between acrylic and oil and cold wax, because a lot of artists are like, well, what's the difference between acrylic and cold wax? Now, in that series, at the end of that series, both that series or that course, as well as my working in a series with complex color acrylic course, I do the whole 4 steps of how you attain that encaustic-like finish, which does include some steel wool and some cold wax medium to get that beautiful encaustic surface. So in both acrylic courses, I have that 4-step series, just so that you know.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I'm going to just reference something. So I'm going to see if I can do this, which is to share my screen. And I'm going to take you all to share. No, that wasn't it.
Did I have that correct about the abstract process? It was just 3 phases that she goes through?
Sorry. Yeah, you took really good notes. So I start with play, and then I go to explore, and then I go to clarify, but each one in my PDPC course is broken up into 3 more stages. So play has 3 stages, explore has 3 stages, and then clarify has 3 stages. So I kind of brushed on the bigger categories, but yeah. So what Cheryl has here, everything that I've shown you is listed on my resource page for the most part. I mean, I'm always adding new stuff, there's the book tab. But anyways, I find it really easy for me to go there and shop from there, because they're all hot links that go to wherever. But I will warn you that during the pandemic, a lot of items will say, sorry, we don't have this, it's out of stock or whatever. And it's all, I'd say, in large part due to the pandemic. And so, some things are not there. And just to be completely transparent, I link to Amazon, and I'm an Amazon associate, so they give me a little kickback, but it's very tiny because, it's Amazon and they're pretty chintzy. So it doesn't add up to a whole lot, but I figure, well, what the heck, I will link to their products because I use them. And I also try to shop locally as much as I can, but I live in a small town, and our small town has what's called the paperclip, which is mostly office supplies. And if they even have a paintbrush, I'm lucky. So I live in a very small town of 10,000 people, and it's really hard for me to get a lot of things that I use. Yeah, so that's the resource page. And then if you want to click on the home page, Cheryl, I can show you. So she's at myartandsuccess.com, and this is my training website. And I've had the site for 2 years now. And from the left-hand side, the Watch, Learn, Go library is I have a call tomorrow, for example, that's a library of over 100 videos, 100 hours of video of me, tutorials and painting and interviewing people and masterclass critiques and all that kind of good stuff. And that grows every month. It gets bigger every month. And that's a subscription group for $9 a month. And then I just recently got this cold wax and oils for beginners. That is kind of a good inexpensive way to kind of learn what you might want to learn if you don't care too much about color design. And then going further, the acrylic and mixed media techniques, that's going to be, actually you can get that for free if you purchase that along with the Powerful Design and Personal Color. And then going to the further right is the acrylic and mixed media working in a series. That's where I paint the 4 paintings from beginning to end, including the framing and the final varnish and all that kind of good stuff. And like if you buy all 3, the 2 acrylic courses and the PDPC, there's significant discounts. So just so that you know, that's kind of what's going on there. Again, there's the resources and what else is on there. Yeah, I've got a masterclass and that's by application only. So if any of you are interested in getting your work critiqued, it doesn't matter what medium you're in, that is a fabulous group. I've got 2 members on the call today, I believe. I think Rob from Germany and Marit from Norway, and they become really good friends of mine. So I invited them into this wonderful.
Which one is that, Pam?
Which one? You mean the masterclass?
Masterclass?
Yeah, it's the Watch and Grow by application only. In the second row. Yeah, that's got a limited number of people I can let in. Like I'm going to cap it off at a certain number. So it's by application. And but anyone who's in PDPC, like usually you're going to get in because the requirements are that you have a very solid understanding of color and design. I don't want anyone in there who doesn't have like a super solid understanding because of the language that we use. So what I really teach is this visual language of art. And if you don't speak the same language, it's kind of like, well, I can't speak to you in Chinese if you don't understand Chinese. It's not that it's so hard, but there are some like subtleties of the language of art that need to be understood so that everybody's on the same page. So I hope that is clear.
All right. So anybody have any questions? And if you, there are some, like I said, I found Pam kind of by accident, and it was the best happy accident that I ever had.
I agree, Cheryl. I'm so glad we connected. I was so surprised when she emailed me too. She's like, would you like to do this workshop for a group? And I was like, oh, well, I didn't really know about Rancho Cordero. So very nice to meet all of you. And it's been really an honor.
Well, and we, you know, we have these we have these different themed shows, and we do workshops in and of ourselves. And basically, by paying you to do this meant that I didn't have to do a workshop, or that Marcia didn't have to do a workshop, or that Ron didn't have to do a workshop. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, it's really fun. I do love to share. It's great. And it's the one way that we can stay connected during this pandemic, which has been hard on everybody. So I do have another workshop coming up. It's like a 4-hour live Zoom call in oil and coal wax medium. And if you look under the workshop link, those workshops are all listed. So yeah. So any other questions?
Anybody? Last chance.
I don't have any questions, but I really enjoyed that, Pam. Thank you so much for facilitating that. And I'm not sure if Leanne is still around, but if you do want to introduce yourself, Leanne, you'll be hosting the next workshop. So if you do hear this, Leanne, then you're welcome to say hello to everyone. But yeah, I really enjoyed that, Pam. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
A lot of really, really cool tips and just interesting use of different media. Oh yes, someone says hi.
Yes.
Video today. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I think that for a lot of people, because we have this show Abstraction coming up, Pam, in not till July, but it's one of those that people are afraid. Abstraction is not easy. And to make good abstract art is very, very difficult. I've seen watercolor artists that do it very well. I've seen oil artists, acrylic artists, and getting as many sort of tips and tricks, whether it's, on how to make those marks and think about it, and then just practice. So this gives them 6 months to practice. So I want the abstraction show, you guys. You all got to come out, and Flo, I'll come pick yours up and take it in. you need to do it because you have not been in a show in a really long time.
That's awesome. I'd love a link to that show when you have it up, Cheryl.
Absolutely. I'll be posting our mixed media one probably next week. I took down a show on Sunday, put up a show on Sunday, just took intake for another show at the MAC yesterday. So things have been wildly busy here at the Palace of the Art Czar.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you wear about 50 hats.
Yes.
So
It's
thank
true.
you so much for inviting me, Cheryl. Thank you for organizing this, getting all these people together, these wonderful artists together. And I hope you'll stay in touch. And
Absolutely.
thank you very, very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. And just one other note, I know that many of you were busy taking notes, and this Pam did a lot of information, just a ton of information. This has been recorded. It will be put onto our Rancho Cordova Arts YouTube channel for you guys so that you can then go back and watch and sort of paint with, pause at your leisure, and really absorb a little bit more because there was a lot of information being thrown out.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend and happy creating.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. See you later.